Right, so our recording has started. I'm about to start the presentation. And yes, so basically our agenda here, we're going to talk about why is technical writing important? Why technical writing? Throughout our courses, we've been studying for about 1 week in our university about this course. And so far we learned it's very important to understand how we should present our documents, we should present our research and give proper references and proper details and give acknowledgement to people who actually give reports and researchers because that's how we're able to solve complex problems and report findings. So so that's why I wanted to talk to you about this for today. But before that, I would like you to introduce yourself. I know through our chat, found out that you're a very developed senior software engineer through your LinkedIn and everything else. And I've seen through your record like how you started as a excuse me, as a junior Java developer and how you progressed to become a senior software engineer and a principal engineer. So
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward for what you have to say about yourself. So
Okay.
please take your time.
Okay. Cool. So hello, everybody. I'm Chris. So I've been a software engineer now for the past how long? 6 years. I graduated from university in 2015, computer science degree. As Hassan very accurately surmised, I am a principal engineer for a part of a large Sainsbury's. I don't know what Sainsbury's, but they're a large retail company here in the UK. I am responsible for a section called hosting, connectivity, and tooling. That involves everything from cloud infrastructure all the way down to large data centers that are sort of managed and controlled by Sainsbury's. It's quite a large, complex infrastructure there to maintain all of the technology that we've got. The networking side of things, and it's a very, very complex network that we've got. And also finally the tools that all the engineers use. So that's everything from building new tools to make engineers' lives really easy, but also buying tools off the shelves like Docker or
Wow.
GitHub or any of that sort of thing.
Wow.
So that's kind of my remit and responsibility right now. There is one thing I have to add. I am not here representing Sainsbury's. I'm not allowed to do that. But I'm here representing myself entirely.
Yes, entirely. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I understand. We can't involve any third party member that can basically affect you. I understand that.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you again. That was a very nice introduction. Let's move on. So the first question that I have to ask you is, as a developer, how often do you actually write a week, and why is it important for you?
So that's a really good question. In terms of frequency that I write, what I've found is that as a junior engineer, there wasn't much expectation for me to clarify my thoughts in the form of writing or in documentation. I was writing very, very low level documentation for other engineers. And so it had to be clear, but it was just large code snippets and things like that. However, as I entered more senior roles, the expectation was left to me to clarify complex engineering ideas and distill them down into easily understood statements. So rather than talking in detail about the Java and the Java virtual machine, I have to talk about the value of the feature that we're building, so on and so forth. So what I will say is that I write, if you don't include code, I write far more frequently. The more senior I've become, I write prose, I write language, anything from technical documents describing how some code works, to guides describing how to use a certain tool, to papers describing some evidence that we've gathered from within the company, and that makes an argument for a certain business decision. And that is now more frequent than it was before. So the more senior I've become, the more writing I do. So in terms of how often, every day, I'm writing something of some form.
Wow. Wow. All right. I have more to say about it, but let's keep moving. We have more questions that can clarify these things as well. Yeah. So I'm sorry. How important is for you to write a successful performance of your job? Like how?
So that, again, another good question. That is critical. It's absolutely critical, 100% critical. If I wasn't able to articulate my thoughts clearly, I wouldn't have the job I've got now. That's 100% certain. And the reason why I'm able to articulate my thoughts more clearly now than I was before. When I was first starting out, I always had trouble explaining myself. And over the years, I've got better, I've improved. And the reason why I've improved is almost exclusively down to regularly writing about ideas that either I've had, new experiences that I've discovered, whatever. I've been blogging as an engineer for like 4 years on and off. And what I found was that the more I blogged, the more I wrote about certain topics,
Oh,
the
that
more,
explains.
sorry?
I'm sorry. I mean, that explains why Yusuf is also a blogger. I mean, he also blogs every day about code. He also blogs everything about how he's doing in his life and how he started in his career in software engineering and become a React Native developer. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense now.
Yeah.
Wow.
What it does, people talk, it, writing about your ideas isn't just, it's not good because you produce a document that other people can read. It's not just that. It's because it helps you think better. And because when you write things down, you're writing for other people. There's nowhere to hide when you write it down. And so you find out in yourself there's these ideas that you don't really understand as well as you thought you did. And so you go and research them, and your writing becomes better and better, and your thinking becomes better. And it's almost always the case that the people that think clearly and communicate clearly also write quite well. And so when I started practicing writing directly, especially for money, when I started selling the writing that I was doing as a content writer, my ability to articulate myself and think clearly increased quite sharply. So it's vital for the success of my job. Absolutely vital. It's 30% of what I do with my time, and probably a lot of my value as in the role that I'm in.
So what we usually do in our university, whenever we come to a new semester, we are given a few labs in each course, and for each course that we have a lab for, we have to give a project for each lab. And
Yep.
once we complete a project, we actually have to give a report for each project.
Yep.
So is that like a kind of practice that our universities actually try to integrate into us, but while not telling us about it, you have to write every day about these things?
So blogging is an example of that. So when you finish your lab, it's very simple. You get your grade, you move on. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye. But the act of writing about it and reflecting on it will help to surface new thoughts and refine your thinking. And then the next time you do a similar lab, you've got all these refined thoughts in your head. So that's what I mean. That's the reason why your course is structured the way it is. It's because it's not really about getting you to write for the sake of writing. It's because it makes you think better. And the better you can think, the better you can solve new problems. And then your writing becomes even better and it feeds itself. I'd strongly recommend any new engineer to blog or write or whatever, even if it's writing Medium blogs that you just publish yourself and only 5 or 10 people read them. It doesn't matter. What matters is the act of writing, because it helps your brain work through complex problems. You mentioned before that we have to, cite our sources and collaborate together in order to solve really complex issues. But it's no good unless those people can articulate and communicate with one another effectively. And that only happens through practice. And people think that you can either do it or you can't, or it's a talent thing, or it's not. It's not. You just practice hard. And the more you practice at it, the better your thinking will be, and the better your speech and your articulation will be, and therefore the better your collaboration is.
Let's move on. Such an amazing answer, by the way. Is writing important to your promotion? Like whatever you're making a product or anything at all, is it really important for you to promote yourself with writing?
Yeah. So personal branding is something that engineers I find struggle with quite a lot. Yusuf, our mutual contact, he's very, very good at personal branding. The thing is, at the moment, because engineers are so in demand, they don't really need to do much of it, right? To get a job, they'll just, they just sit on LinkedIn and say, I'm looking for a job. And all of a sudden, all these job offers flow in. But it's not the same as you will get 1,000 job offers if you don't do any personal branding, and all of them will be okay. And there'll be some good ones and there'll be some bad ones, and most of them will be okay. If you do some personal branding, you'll get the attention of some of the larger, more interesting companies, and the salary difference between the okay ones and the good ones is enormous. It's huge. So your literal value in the market will increase if you're writing and blogging regularly, because it'll improve your personal brand. Definitely important.
Wow. So that means that building a following through our code, through our blogging, whatever it may be, that has a huge impact in job hunting.
100%. So I can give you 2 examples of when. So the first time my blogging got brought up, I was in a job interview for an energy company, and they had an in-house recruiter. He was called Sean. Sean messaged me and said, "Hi, Chris, really interested. I've got this. I think it was a senior engineer role." And I went in, And I walked in the room and I looked at the TV and they had one of my blog posts on the TV. And I was like, oh God. And they were like, we'd just like to talk to you about this to start with. And that was the interview. The interview, half the interview was just them talking over a blog post I'd written because it helped them solve a problem. So, you know, one of the really scary things about hiring software engineers is, are these people going to be good? Are these people going to actually help us make money, solve problems, and so on? If that person in the room has written a blog post, you've already solved a problem for them before you've walked into the room, if you're lucky, you know? So that was a really clear example where, and I pretty much had the interview before I walked in because the blog post had already helped. So, you know, that's one example. The other example is from the other side. So when I was, I think I was still a junior engineer in Sainsbury's, we started an engineering blog. I don't know what it's doing now. I haven't looked at it in a while, but we were really struggling to hire engineers just because the market was very competitive. It was very, very hard to hire. Everyone was struggling to hire engineers at the time. This was in 2017. And the thing we found was the more we blogged and the more technology we blogged about, the higher the quality of engineers came to our company. So not only is it good for you personally to write and blog and publish and show off the knowledge that you've got and solve problems and all that sort of thing and build a following, it's also good on the other side if you're a company. So engineers respond to it as well as hiring managers. So it's a mutually beneficial thing for you to get stuck into. So yes, absolutely 100%. It's crucial in my opinion. There are lots of engineers that don't do it and they get on just fine. And there are lots of other ways of promoting yourself, but writing is the most accessible, the most straightforward, and the easiest thing to practice. It costs no money to practice it.
Exactly. Does it mean like having writing skills and having these technical writing skills, especially regarding blogging, can you reach a job faster than what you would get from a normal engineer and have the same pay scale as what they're getting?
Yeah. So in terms of salary, so if we, yes is the short answer. Yes. So in terms of getting a job and the pace that you can get a job, even if nobody reads your blog, and even if they can't find a solution to their problems in your blog, then they can see that you're engaged and you're passionate because you're spending your own time voluntarily writing your blog, right? So that helps, you know, and that's very, very useful if you haven't got any previous experience to back you up, you know. So having that blog is just another argument for why you're a great hire, you know. And yes, definitely the engineers that I've hired in the past that have blogged, I think most of them we've paid more for because mostly because they've been better engineers. And the reason why they're better engineers is because they can communicate more effectively. Another thing as well is just, this is a slight side point, but people just differentiate between technical writing and writing code, you know, as software engineers, you know, but who are you writing code for? Other people, right? You're not writing code for the machine, you're writing code for other engineers so they can read your code and understand how the software works. If you were writing code just for the machine, you'd be hitting ones and zeros, or you'd be writing in assembler or C or something. The reason why Java and all these languages exist is because other engineers need to be able to read your code. So the same skills that you practice when you're writing your technical documents, describing how something works and making it really, really clear, are the same skills that you practice when you're writing code. You need to write really clear, easily understood code. So writing has a direct correlation with becoming a better software engineer, just purely on a technical basis. So, you know, it gets into all these different skills. So it's definitely important for your promotion in that respect, because you will be a better engineer because you'll be able to articulate yourself more clearly, and therefore your code will be more maintainable.
All right. Next thing I want to ask is, what are some features of writing that you look into when someone else is writing and try it on their own? So when you read someone else's blog or when you read someone else's work, what's the thing that's a defining point for you? Is it the vocabulary? Is it the way he writes? Or is it how easy it is for you to understand?
There's two things that I really admire when people write. One is humor, when people are funny. I think that because that helps it stick in the mind. You remember the jokes. You remember that you laughed when you read it, right? And there's a famous Maya Angelou quote. You don't remember what people say. You remember how they make you feel. And so when you read the blog post, if you're laughing halfway through it, you will remember that and it will stick with you. And that's a real talent. That's a real skill to develop. The second thing is saying the most with as few words as possible. So they can articulate very, very clearly what they want to say in a very small number of words. That I'm always very impressed by people that can do that. It's
So,
something that I've always struggled with.
so does the phrase minimum effort and maximum satisfaction apply here?
Exactly, definitely, 100%, 100%.
Wow.
That's correct. And fittingly quite a short phrase, right? That the idea is that engineers are expert readers, so they won't read your blog post from top to bottom. They won't think about when you're researching a coding problem. Do you read every web page? No, you just scroll up and down and look. Is that there? Is that there? Nope, move on. Next one. Is that there? Nope, move on. Next one. People spend about 20 seconds on average on a web page, and then go, and that's if they're being very, very generous with you. Usually it's 4 or 5 seconds if they're just browsing through. So there's no point writing these big, long, detailed, loads and loads of information, lots and lots of words and all the rest of it. The trick is to get the information clearly projected on the screen. So people who can make the information available, or what we call at a glance, just looking at it and seeing it, straight away you're hooked in. That's a skill. So surfacing information clearly, using as few words as possible, and humor are the three. The two are bigger than the other, but those are 3 big things I'd look for. And certainly strive in my own writing, definitely.
Wow. And thank you again. That concludes our questions from this time. And since it's such an amazing opportunity to talk with you, because we rarely get to speak to someone outside the country who's actually well established, is it all right if we ask you a few career questions that can help us out later on?
Go on. Go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, one question that I've made up is actually because we're actually learning data science in our semester here, and I've been inspired because of our teacher who recently introduced this course to us, like how Netflix and how LinkedIn and how really big software companies actually use data science to basically get more income because they earn mainly through their recommendations. I mean, if someone recommends you a product on Netflix, like let's say watch the new Squid Games, right? I've never heard of Squid Games, but because of the recommendation, I'm gonna watch it, right? So that's basically because of how artificial intelligence and data science act hand in hand in here, right? So I understand data science is very important outside the country, but when I look at people here, they have never heard of data science. They have never heard why data is important in Pakistan. I mean, right now, if I search data, like the word data in Pakistan, in Karachi, Pakistan, the first thing that I'll find out on LinkedIn are developers, that they're hiring developers, software engineers, JavaScript developers, and web engineers, front-end developers, and many other software engineers and senior software engineers. And later on, then we see that some shopping malls, they require data analysts, financial analysts, and some other something related to analysis. Because, oh yes, another thing I know about data science is actually that if you have the term coined analyst, you're essentially a data analyst. No matter where you are in finance, if you're called a finance analyst or business analyst, you're basically a data scientist, a data analyst in that field. That's what I understood also about that. And yeah, so tell us about this. Is it really, really important for us to learn data right now in this time of period?
Cool. Data science is quite it's quite a narrow corner of the market. So very, very, very good data scientists make a great deal of money. But data science is very mathematical. It's hugely mathematical, and if you don't have a passion for the mathematics behind it, then you may struggle with it because it's so heavily based in statistics and things like that. Because you've got this big disordered set of information, and you have to use mathematical tools to find correlations and patterns, things that match. And you may use artificial intelligence to detect those patterns for you, but you still have to have the mathematical training, the training in mathematics to be able to explore and have the tools to be able to poke the data and understand what's relevant. So yes, if you really enjoy the maths, then give it a go. Here's my advice though. What's most important is that when you're starting out, and this is something that I did-ish, and I wish I'd done more of it, is be a generalist when you first start. Because the thing is, if you specialize from day one, you are very quickly going to fall out of touch. So, okay, let's say you decide, you graduate and you decide, I am a data scientist. I'm just going to be a data scientist from here going forward, right? In a year, you are no longer a viable. What programming languages do you use on your course?
From our first semester, we've been studying C++, then we have studied Java, object-oriented programming, and data structures with C++, and then we move on to database management. We use Oracle in that. And
Cool.
then after that, we started doing operating systems, and that was in Linux. And now we're studying Python.
Cool. So by the time you graduate, you've got experience in C++, Java, and Python, right? And you've
Right.
got some database experience and things like that. If you graduate and decide you are now a data scientist, in a year, you are no longer a Java engineer or a Python engineer or a C, or maybe C++ doesn't move as fast, but Java and Python move quickly. Java does new releases every 6 months.
Right.
And if you're busy doing data science, you'll fall out of touch with Java and Python. So this is why I say it's very difficult to be a complete generalist as you get older. Your brain literally just doesn't work as effectively. But you guys are how old? 20, 21?
21, yeah.
Yeah. So at 21, your brain is just like you can cram as much as you want in there and you'll be okay. So my recommendation is yes, learning some data science is important. Adding that as a tool and getting that experience is important. Just like learning AI is really important. Just like learning how to write really clean code is important. Just like learning how to collaborate effectively with others is really important. In the early days, they're all equally important because your job as a new professional is to deliver value to the company. And in my experience, the best way to do that as you're starting out is to be a generalist and to just move all over these different skills and try lots of things out. And you may find something and go, oh, data science, that's interesting. Actually, I'm really, really passionate about that. I'm willing to sacrifice some of my time. I'm willing to sacrifice a year of Java engineering to pursue data science and nothing else. But I wouldn't recommend going full on data science as you graduate. Grow into the skill that you have a talent for. Don't try and force it. Would be my advice. And that's how I've been a generalist my whole career, and it's been tough, really, really hard because you basically have to keep up with 10 things instead of one or two. But it's paid because it's meant that I can move between jobs quite easily, and I never really have to worry about employment because there's always a skill or a role that I can fit myself into. So being a data scientist makes you a very, very good specialist, but not necessarily. You might miss out on some of the things as well. So I'd find the thing you're passionate about, because in software engineering right now, all these different fields have value. So that's my answer. Be a generalist to start with, and if data science appeals to you, then learn it.
And another thing about myself, actually, in this semester, we had 3 electives. One was data science, one was mobile application development, and one was web engineering. I didn't choose web engineering because I'm already doing it by myself. I'm already learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript by myself. So I chose mobile application development and data science as my last option. So yeah, and from mobile application development, what we learned in our semester here, we're learning how to make apps using Android Studio. Now, when we graduate, will software house companies actually start using that? Because I've found out that what's highly in demand is React Native developers because they have the platform to work in iOS and Android. So,
Yes.
Do you think that we should continue with Android Studio, or we can just move on with our own way?
I think that the purpose of your degree is to give you a taste of lots of different skills so that you have an informed decision. It's not to make you a perfect software engineer, okay? So Android Studio is great because you're going to learn a lot about how Android works. One of the problems with React Native is you are hidden away from the detail of how iOS and Android works. And so if something breaks at the Android level and all you know is React Native, you can't do anything about that. You can't bridge that gap. It's very difficult to do. Whereas if you know a little bit of Android Studio and you know a little bit of iOS, perhaps your degree gives you that, and then you move on to React Native, you can troubleshoot problems that exist down here while delivering value up here. React Native is quite straightforward to learn as well. React is a very easy paradigm. I spent 1.5 years writing React and half a year writing React Native, and it's pretty straightforward stuff. What I would recommend is to supplement your learning with your degree. Yes, try React Native yourself for sure. Android Studio, by the way, is definitely used in the industry all over the place. So it's not a bad skill to learn at all, because there are lots of apps that need to use very specific Android functionality, or companies that are big enough that they can afford to build 2 native applications that are perfectly optimized for both Android and iOS. Remember, your React Native app is never going to be perfectly optimized for Android and iOS. It's going to work on Android and iOS, but it won't be like perfectly tuned or optimized.
So isn't that like saying React Native is basically like a full stack developer? I mean, he's a jack of all trades, but master of none, right?
Sort of, but there are some really great React Native apps. And by the way, it depends on the application that you're building, right? Some of these applications you don't need to be a master. If you're building it, if you're making a phone app that simply I don't know, tracks the stock in a warehouse, you don't need a hyper optimized Android build and a hyper optimized iOS build, so React Native is a really great choice for that. But if you're writing an app that leverages greatly the CPU and memory on this thing and needs to use very, very low level OS commands to operate this thing efficiently, if it's doing something really complicated, then you might need to be an expert in a certain area. The purpose of your degree isn't to make you an expert in anything. It's to make you a skilled generalist so that you can start, okay, this is cool. I know a little bit about this. So when you do get into a job, if they want an Android developer, you have a bit of experience with that. And if they want a Java developer, you have some experience with that. If they want a C++ developer, you have some experience with that. You won't be the best person in the room. You're just starting out. That's fine. But you have something to start with, So React Native is great. And if you want to try it out, definitely 100% try it out. I think it's a brilliant framework for most apps. But what you lose is the ability to optimize for the OS. And that's a tricky problem to solve without just learning straight up Android and straight up iOS.
I'm learning a lot here. This is amazing for me, actually. Guys, do you have anything to ask? Moise, yourself?
So,
No? All right.
Good.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chris. I mean, it's been such an amazing pleasure. It's been such an amazing honor. I mean, I can't believe what I've learned today. It's been an amazing pleasure. I mean, I have to say this. Thank you very much.
No worries, mate.
Yes. And, oh, yes, I was saying, what I should have mentioned this before, actually. What I'm also doing right now, I'm at my 6th semester. So right now, we have been encouraged by teachers to go out there now. Go out there, try to find something, try to find anywhere at all. If you can work as a developer or anything at all, try to get a job right now. So at least we have a stepping stone in computer science, in our field. So what I've been doing for the past 6 months, I've been working as an online tutor. I've been teaching HTML, CSS, and JavaScript while side by side learning. And yes, I've also been progressing towards other things as well. But what I wanted to know, like if I'm gonna go for a bigger job, if I want to go for a paid internship, like if I want to stand out, what's the thing that I have to do other than just preparing for interview questions? Because I mean, interview questions can be just memorized basically if you learn on Google, right? I mean, it has to be something that has to make us stand out for companies, right?
So the thing with new engineers that they never ever have are stories. So what they can do is they can say, so for example, an interview question might well be, can you tell me a time when you've had to troubleshoot a really complicated problem and you had to fix a really complicated system? And the difference between a junior engineer and a senior engineer is the junior engineer will say, well, not really, because I don't really have experience in that. The end. Do you know what I mean? And that's it. That's the best they can do because they can't give a story. A senior engineer typically can go, yeah, I worked on this crazy microservice distributed system that was across 10 different countries and processed 1 million things a minute. And they can talk about all these things. And that's what makes somebody credible. So if I were you, I would go out into open source tooling, start trying to contribute to open source tools as much as possible, not least because it's a good thing to do. You're contributing, you're volunteering your time, but you're doing it for the benefit of other engineers, and you're helping to build tooling that helps the community or whatever. And what that will do is it will give you stories, and that's a really important weapon to have, because when an interview comes up, phrasing things as a story, telling people stories, they will listen, they'll engage with you much better. People like stories and they listen to stories. So that's my recommendation: is think about how you're going to build your stories. And the best way to do that is to try and quickly engage with production software. And that means open source in your case for now. And the goal is to how many good stories can you collect? How many of these great engineering moral stories can you put together where you've learned something? That would be my recommendation for you and for everybody in your position.
Thank you again, Mr. Chris. It's been such an amazing honor. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank Mr. Yusuf enough for me. It's been such a great time to talk with you. I'm sorry if I've caused any inconvenience in your schedule or anything like that.
Not at all, mate. All good.
Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much. Take it easy.
Thank you.